Hello, this is Andrina Duran, Education Associate for the Office of Adult Education. You are now watching the 2020-2021 Assessment Policy Update Training for Veteran Staff. Let's take a look at updates that occurred in previous year. In 2018-2019, there were 5 updates. One that was concerning diploma students and Carnegie units. There was another regarding the educational functioning level descriptors. We have a policy now for students who score out of range when taking the TABE pretest, a policy regarding student enrollment in post-secondary education or training, and finally, the South Carolina Assessment Policy training process for update trainings for veterans. Let's take a look at each one in more detail. One of the policies from 2018-2019 was the policy regarding diploma students and Carnegie units. The policy states that programs are now able to count diploma students' progress as an educational functioning level gain if that student accumulated enough Carnegie units that would move them from 9th, 10th grade, which is L5, to 11th, 12th grade, which is L6. That policy is now in place. The NRS, National Reporting System, updated the educational functioning level descriptors in 2018-19. They were updated to reflect the college and career readiness standards, which is aligned with TABE 1112 assessment, as well as the GED exam. Now let's talk about pre-testing with TABE 1112. As veterans, we understand that an advance or completion is recorded if, according to the post-test results, the learner has skills corresponding to one or more EFL levels higher than the incoming level in the areas initially used for placement. Completing an EFL is also referred to as making an educational level gain. But the policy changed in 2018-2019. In the assessment policy, it now states, however, a student who scores more than one NRS level below the targeted level will not receive a scale score or NRS level when pretesting. In this case, immediate re-pretesting with a more appropriate level is required. If a student scores more than one NRS level above the target level, a plus sign will appear next to the scale score. In this case, the examiner has the option to re-pretest at a higher level. That is the policy that we follow now regarding students who score out of range or OR when pretesting on TABE 1112. Now let's talk about measurable skill gain, or MSG. WIOA Performance Indicator, MSG, which includes educational functioning level gains through pre and post testing, awarding of Carnegie units through progression from ABE level 5 to level 6, and that year it was added that any students that would enter into post-secondary education after exiting the adult education program or if they entered training after leaving that adult education program, would be counted as an educational functioning level gain. There is also a way to receive MSG, and that includes receipt of a secondary credential. So now we have an additional way for programs to receive MSG through educational functioning level gain, and that is student enrollment in post-secondary education or a training program after exiting that adult education program within the same school year. Another way to get educational function level gains for our students, it's always a good thing. The assessment policy on update trainings for veterans was adjusted in 2018-19, and it states that all designated veteran staff members are required to have annual assessment policy update training. If veteran staff does not receive the update training by the end of the second quarter, he or she will be suspended from administering any assessment and will be required to attend a full assessment policy training the following year in order to be in compliance and continue as an administrator of a specific assessment. And that is what you're doing now. You are fulfilling your responsibility to be compliant and viewing the assessment policy update training for veterans. Thank you. There were no assessment policy updates for the 2019-2020 school year. So what are the current updates? Let's take a look. The 2020-2021 assessment policy updates include information that was updated regarding distance education, and remote testing has been added. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2019-2020, we've had to make quite a few adjustments for our students in adult education. The new policy reflects the changes. As veterans, we know that distance education is formal learning activity where students and instructors are separated by geography, time, or both for the majority of the instructional period. Due to COVID-19, all students and teachers were separated. Due to that fact, we have added policies to make it a little bit more flexible and offer more options to be able to connect with our students and instruct them appropriately. This is a distance education policy reminder. Distance learning materials are delivered through a variety of media. And we wanted to put an emphasis on the fact that this media is including, but not limited to, print, audio recording, videotape, broadcasts, computer software, web-based programs, and other online technology. And that teachers support distance learners through communication via mail, telephone, email, or online technologies and software. In adult education, we've always used these different ways to communicate and instruct our students. But we wanted to put it in as a reminder because we're having to work with more students in more of these ways. In the 2020-2021 Assessment Policy Manual, one of the sections is called Measuring Contact Hours for Students in Distance Education. There has been an update in that section. And there has also been an area added called Categories of Students. Let's take a look at that. Please be aware that wherever the sentences are underlined, there has been an update. Measuring contact hours for students in distance education. We all know as veterans that distance learners must have at least 12 hours of contact with the program before they can be counted for federal reporting purposes. Those 12 hours in the past were required to be face-to-face. Now, that is not the case. The initial 12 hours should include the program orientation, pre-assessment, one-on-one counseling with goal identification, and determination of distance learning compatibility. And it can be done in several different ways. We'll look at that next. The first category of students would be a student who has been transferred from classroom-based instruction to distance learning services and have not yet completed the 12-hour contact needed to be considered a participant. They must meet the 12-hour requirement before being considered a participant. But the area that's underlined is where there's the change. The 12-hour enrollment requirement for distance learners can be met by accruing contact hours through telephone, video, teleconference, or online communication, where the participant and program staff can interact and through which participant identity is verifiable. This leaves a lot of room for flexibility and contact with our students. Now let's talk about Category B. These students are newly enrolled in distance learning and who were not receiving classroom instruction, but they must meet the 12-hour requirement before being considered a participant. The 12-hour enrollment requirement for distance learners, the same as the previous slide, can be met by accruing contact hours through telephone, video, teleconference, or online communication, where the participant and program staff can interact and through which participant identity is verifiable. This type of student could be a virtual student from the beginning to the end of their adult education journey. They could do their registration online, they could do their intake and orientation online, as well as have their classes online. This is a new category of student. Now let's talk about tracking actual and proxy hours. As veterans, we've all remember that we use the clock time model. The clock time model is based on a list of approved softwares that can be used that track time for our students. And it also logs them out after so many minutes of inactivity. But due to the pandemic and the fact that we are separated from our students and that some students may not have access to internet, we now have teacher verification model and learner mastery model. There's a link to the distance education guidelines and approved curricula that you can click on for more detailed information. In the past, as I mentioned previously, there was only clock time model, which assigns contact hours based on the elapsed time that a participant is connected to or engaged in an online or standalone software program that tracks time. But now we have two more options. We'll look at them on the next couple of slides. Teacher verification model. This model assigns a fixed number of hours of credit for each assignment based on teacher determination of the extent to which the participant engaged in or completed the assignment. As I mentioned previously, there is a link for the guidelines to give you detailed information on how you would handle the teacher verification model. And there are also samples that can be followed to make it a little easier to understand. The third model is the learner mastery model, which assigns a fixed number of hours of credit based on the participant passing a test on the content of each lesson. Participants work with the curriculum and materials, and when they feel they have mastered the material, take a test. Everyone should have a way to continue their class assignments, even if they do not have access to internet. And these different models are ways that we can make that possible. The testing policies that you will read in the 2020-2021 Assessment Policy Manual for TABE 1112 and BEST Plus 2.0 remain the same. We have added remote testing for TABE 1112 according to DRC, the test maker, and we've also added virtual BEST Plus 2.0 testing according to what CAL allows, which is the test maker for BEST Plus 2.0. Let's talk a little about TABE 1112 remote testing. It is important to remember that although DRC, the TABE test maker, has their policies and guidelines for remote testing, but in South Carolina, we have our own policies, which differ from DRC's, specifically as it relates to the guidance for administering the locator. In South Carolina, the locator must be proctored, and it must be proctored by a trained TABE test administrator. The TABE remote proctoring guidance can be found here. There are several sets of instructions. This page includes the instructions for the examiner. The top link is the examiner instructions for the locator, and the bottom link is the examiner instructions for the actual TABE test itself. You can also find the guidance on tabetest.com. Although you will find instructions for the student as it relates to the locator on tabetest.com, in South Carolina, we do not use that guidance. Once again, the locator must be proctored. On this slide, you have instructions for the student regarding taking the actual test. There's a link on this slide for instructions and guidance regarding giving the Best Plus 2.0 test virtually. Please follow the instructions specifically. If you have questions regarding anything specific, we have listed here each education associate and their primary role. We also have the email address. Feel free to reach out if you have questions that pertain to what their role is. We also have information of our state director, Mr. Michael King. If you have any questions about the assessment policy and the assessment policy update, feel free to contact me, Andrina Duran, at the email address on the screen, or you can call me at the phone number listed. This concludes the 2020-2021 Assessment Policy Update Training for veteran staff. Thank you so much for all that you do, and have a great day.